the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
Well, we like to start each podcast with the sounds of nature, but we're standing next to quite a busy road here, the road that goes from the village where Chris's farm is into Norwich. Although it's a sea road, it's heavily used, isn't it?
It certainly is. We're just at the end of the sort of morning drive to work, really, and everybody's using it from all the villages south of Norwich, Shotsham, Stoke-Holy Cross, obviously Caister, and everybody piles into Norwich for work at this time of day. But I've chosen this site, although the phenomena we're going to visit in a few seconds is on several locations at High Ash Farm. We're right on the northern boundary of the farm, and Earsham Gravels, and formerly Frettenham Lime Quarry, is just on the other side of the road to us. We're only a mile south of the city of Norwich, and this is an old bank. It's a field that I used to farm, and I reclaimed it in the 1970s. And I bought it for £70 an acre. I had to sell my Mini to find enough money to buy it.
70 quid, so what's the going rate these days?
10,000 an acre, where it is, minimum, yes.
And this was underwater, wasn't it? Less than a year ago.
Oh, yes, it's in the floodplain. We're right by the River Tass, by the way. I spent most of my childhood within 50 yards of where we're standing, catching roach, dace, minnows, and if I was lucky, I'd get a gudgeon as well.
Oh, they're tricky customers, aren't they?
So, interesting time of year. We're looking at a few weird sort of phenomena this morning. Let's just walk on a little bit, because we're looking at the work of a moth. It's called the brown-tail moth.
Oh my goodness, this tree is incredible.
Absolutely. It's a British native tree. There's some elder next to it, which is untouched, but the spindle tree, which is what it is one of the favourites for the female moth to have laid her eggs on. She's called a yellow-tail moth. She's a member of the ermine species of moths, and what she does is lay her eggs. Oh, the big lorry going past over a bump in the road. She lays her eggs on the leaves, and she, on the tip of her tail, is a little sort of patch of hairs. It's a brown tail moth. If she gets alarmed, she can raise the tail up above her wings, but the moth itself looks really demure, beautiful, all covered in white hairs. It looks like a furry white moth is the best way to describe it. Now, she will lay her eggs willy-nilly over the tree, and on each batch of eggs she deposits a few hairs and some sort of this lacy material which helps protect the eggs from being eaten by birds. Then the eggs hatch, and the caterpillars in their next stage of life, the second stage of metamorphosis, changing to eventually another moth, they hatch out and they start to devour the leaves, but they do it in such a way that the entire spindle tree, British native tree, has been defoliated. Can you see a leaf on it? Because it's
not a single leaf, the whole tree, and we're looking up about 15 feet up, and it's all covered in what looks like cobwebs, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like someone's dropped a giant cobweb on it.
Exactly that. It just doesn't look real.
Looks like Mrs. Havisham's wedding cake, if you remember.
Yes, I certainly do.
Great Expectations.
Just look, and the whole shrub is shrouded. Now, when you look through the mesh against the light, you can actually see the caterpillars migrating up their cocoon web to find any other leaves. Eventually, they'll lower themselves to the ground. Some have already done that and landed on nettles. Then they wrap themselves up and go to the next stage of metamorphosis, this huge change which moths and butterflies go through, and they then pupate. And here's one on its way down. Matthew, look here. So lucky. It's a little thread, and two others on their way down as well, about 3-4 millimetres long each caterpillar. But the caterpillars at this stage are covered in detachable hairs.
There's a good one.
Yes. Oh wow. Yes. It's yellow with black dots on it. So it's the caterpillar of this particular moth species. Now, the important thing is not to touch them. Although they're not poisonous as such, what happens is they are covered in these microscopic hairs which detach themselves, and they kind of embed themselves in your skin, and some people are really allergic to them and can come out in a rash, sort of in a part of the body, and particularly if the hairs get in your eyes. If you've got them on your hand and then you wipe your finger over your eye, it causes intense irritation in the eyes.
Now, in some parts of the country, I've read stories in the local papers that walkers and cyclists want these trees cut down.
Yes,
because
exactly.
of just what you said.
Right. In the 1790s, would you believe, in London, there was a huge outbreak of this particular moth species in Clapham. And they paid the out-of-work people and the poor people to cut down the trees and burn them in order to rid the parish of this noxious creature. So you're quite right, that is a way of controlling it. You can't really spray individual trees, but the only time it's really alarming is when it chooses other host trees. We've got it on the farm on the hawthorn, we've got it on the blackthorn, just in places. As I said, its favourite of all is this tree species, spindle. And the other one that causes the worry is when it gets into apple trees, fruit trees, and that can defoliate the tree. The tree usually, including this one, will produce a new set of leaves. It hasn't killed the tree, it's just completely defoliated. But obviously if you're relying on an apple crop and this happens, I've chosen it because it's right by the road, and if you're driving home from work, I know you've got to keep your eyes on the road, but it's within a yard or two of the Norwich to Stoke Holy Cross road, and it just looks like a silver giant. It looks like some sort of fancy trick has been carried out. And just look through here, you can see the sort of all the webbing going down and the caterpillars making their way down to the base, ready to pupate.
It's quite a spectacular example, this, isn't it? It's the largest one I've seen.
Yes, if you walk this way a little bit more, we can actually get another view of how the web works.
All these great circles in the webs.
Yeah, and the caterpillars are going round the circles, about the size of a cricket ball. Just an amazing sight, and not a leaf left. There's a dead, curled-up leaf just in there, I can see.
Like a laddered pair of tights.
Yes, exactly. I wouldn't know. I haven't worn them for years. So, and just look up through at the skyline, covered in tens of thousands of black little wiggling caterpillars. They look black from underneath, looking through at the sky. But an amazing sight, and it's one of those years where you just have a particular creature like this brown-tailed moth just doing extraordinarily well, and in a year or two it will probably rear its head again when the conditions are right. What is the key to this has been the warm weather that we've had, and that's what produced the ideal conditions for this particular moth. And there's one strand of this silk cotton going all the way down to the hedge, and just look all the way along it at intervals of 2 or 3 inches, caterpillars crawling all the way down and going up again to see if they can find a new area.
Like a great big tightrope walk they're doing there,
absolutely
isn't it? Blowing
does.
in the wind.
A trapeze act, isn't
the
it?
strength of the gossamer.
Yes, exactly. That's a good word to describe it. It is gossamer. So birds tend to avoid it, particularly, although there's lots of nutrition in for blue tits, great tits, long-tailed tits, with all these caterpillars. They avoid it because the hairs get kind of stuck in their throat and cause irritation to the birds. There's only one bird that I know relishes this sort of setup, and that's the cuckoo. It seems to be able to cope very, very well with the little hairs, and its digestive system isn't upset.
So when do we see the moths?
Well, the moths will be on the wing in about July, August, and then they'll hibernate over the winter. They are rather beautiful though, although this spectacle looks a bit weirdly and a bit ghostly to say the least. The moths themselves are beautiful. It's got a close relative, the yellow-tailed sort of ermine moth there, and that's got a yellow tail, as you can imagine, and this is the brown-tailed moth is the correct thing.
Well, this really is a spectacular sight. It's just like at those dreadful Halloween parties. People have spray-on cobwebs,
yes,
don't
they certainly do.
And
Yes.
It's exactly what's happened to this tree.
But it's enormous. There's, God, it's so difficult to describe, and there are these long sort of trails hanging down into the undergrowth. It's truly spectacular, and that's why I love the Countryside podcasts that we do. There's something like this, unusual and weird, out in the countryside, just a normal part of nature, and that's why I'm in love with the countryside, if you like. It is fascinating.
It's our weekly trip to High Ash Farm in Norfolk with farmer Chris Skinner. And more to see, Chris?
Yes, we're on the way to another unusual phenomena. Don't look at me like that.
Not much in the way of sunshine this week. A little blue sky over Chris's right shoulder, but mainly grey. And the curse of Norfolk, isn't it? The wind is coming right off the North Sea, and it actually goes right through you.
I think so, yes. So that's why I'm standing sideways, so it's not got such a target. But you're quite right. We are absolutely drought-stricken here. We've had 2 or 3 minuscule showers in the last week, and the total is 0.8 mil, not enough to get my t-shirt damp, and so I've carried on working. So the hay is suffering hugely. You can see on our hillsides behind us over there, large patches of dry grass are appearing
and this
all over.
Northerly wind dries everything.
It does. It desiccates the grass. And as far as the hay goes, we've done something terrible to make it worse. About 3 weeks ago, there was a quick, heavy shower of rain. We got 10 millimetres, so we got out with a fertiliser spreader and fertilised the hay crop. And of course, if you do that, you are stimulating the grass to grow, but it can't grow because of lack of moisture. Grass, if you're producing it for bulk, for sort of storage for the horse season over the winter months when the horses eat the hay, it needs lots and lots of moisture.
And that half inch wasn't enough?
No, it actually has done more harm than good, because it's put the grass under stress, saying, you know, you can grow because you've got plenty of food, but you can't grow because there's no water. So, you know what farmers are like. It's either too wet, too dry, too cold or too hot. But there we are. You have to kind of go with it. Each season's different, but I must say that the farming here is becoming more and more challenging each year. But we're here to celebrate nature, which is what we do on the weekly podcasts that we do. And we're going to start you off with just something perhaps from your childhood, Matthew. I don't know. These little growths on this tiny young oak tree. The oak's about 6 feet tall. The young oaks all over the farm. These are called marble galls, and it's a particular species of gall which I can just, excellent, I can see a hole, a tiny hole where the gall wasp has left the particular gall. The gall wasp will lay its eggs. There's several species of gall wasp in the UK. Lay its eggs in the tip of an oak bud. The eggs then hatch out, and as a reaction to the young wasps, the grubs actually eating the growth, it throws out one of these spectacular round marble galls, and children used to gather them and actually play marbles with them. They were called click-clacks, because when you gathered a lot and kept them in a little bag to play marbles with, the sound of the dried galls would go click-clack in the bag. So there we are. This is a good one because the gall wasp has left. There's usually a single gall wasp grub in each gall.
And they're brown, about 3/4 of an inch across.
Yes.
And quite spherical.
Yes, they are. I can take one off here because they've actually left. And hard. Look, you can't even, you'll have a go getting your fingernail into them. You can see where you can play marbles with them.
Yeah.
And the gall wasp has left that. Sometimes you'll see a much larger hole because it's a favourite food. The birds know there's a grub in there. Good grub, you could say. And the hole will be much, much larger than that tiny woodworm-sized hole that we just saw in the gall in front of us. Now, something spectacular happens at this time of the year. We're just going to walk about 20 yards over to this oak tree over here. And as we're walking towards the tree, can you see some sort of white growths in the canopy of the tree? It's in the corner of a field.
Yeah, someone's left some string there, haven't they?
They're white. They look like golf balls, I suppose. It's the best way to describe it.
Oh, I see.
Yes. You just come into vision as we get closer. So, there we are. Getting there. I've left this little oak tree in the corner of the field. Again, we're right by the Norwich to Stoke Holy Cross road. We're only 20 yards from the road this time instead of right against it.
It's the child of one of these, presumably, about 18 feet high.
Yes, some magnificent oak trees right beside us. Let's have a go. Rat's just run over a thorn or something and did a very loud yelp. But he's mousing now under the tree. Let's just see if we can sort of get one down over. I'll then describe what we're actually looking at. Are you tall enough to reach that branch up there and pull that down towards us? Excellent. Well done. Good.
Ah,
Right.
So these, aren't these the buds?
No, not at all. These are called oak apples.
No, they're apple shaped.
They're apple shaped. They look like an apple, and if you break one in half, they smell like an apple.
Oh, these are the buds at the
They're
end.
the buds on the terminal part of the oak, but these would have been laid this spring by the oak apple gall wasp. It's only about 1/4 of an inch across its wingspan, so they're tiny. It lays its eggs in there, and again the oak reacts by producing this large sort of golf ball size for the larger ones, oak apples. And it's really special in our culture because on the 29th of May you have Oak Apple Day, and it's to celebrate the victory of King Charles II after he was hunted by Cromwell's soldiers, and he ended up hiding up in the canopy of an oak tree. And so it became fashionable on his birthday, which was the 29th of May, to wear oak sprigs in your collar to sort of celebrate the restoration of the monarchy from the Cromwell sort of imposition, if you like,
And
back
he was
then.
saved by climbing a tree and hiding in it.
Absolutely, yes.
Or so the legend goes.
Yes, so it goes. And he sort of returned to London and celebrated on his birthday. And it's the time of the year that you can find these oak apples. So Oak Apple Day is the 29th of May. Is an old song that I'm not very fluent at singing, but nevertheless I won't take one off, but I was going to take it off and chop it up with my fingers. This one's about 1.5 inches across, and it's got tinges of red and orange on it. There's some red on that one there, like bright red. Now, what's different about this gall and the little marble galls we actually looked at a moment ago is there's up to 20 little maggots in here. Again, brilliant food, and these will gradually dry over the summer. Then the wasps come out and will lay a second brood of eggs on the roots of oak trees. So you have kind of two episodes of this particular gall wasp each year. So just amazing. It's easy to walk past and not see them. You'll see there's all sorts of different galls out in the countryside, particularly those under the leaves of oaks. This one hasn't come into leaf yet. It's just finishing flowering. The oak it is. You've got these tassels of the male catkins, but shortly it'll come into leaf here. And then you have little spangle galls on the underside of the leaves, which are also equally fascinating. There we are. So, yep, 2 gall species. So it's just there's probably 100, 150 in this particular tree because it's out in the open. It's by itself. I hope it's going to be a magnificent tree in the village in years to come. So it's a beautiful English oak. And it doesn't really affect the tree at all because there's so much growth. Some of the galls can actually get quite big, almost as large as a small eating apple.
It's just one of the facets of an oak. As someone I remember hearing it being called like a vertical pasture.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. It's home and host to myriads of species, some of which we know very, very little about, some of which are scarce, and some, like the oak apples there, makes you smile because of the history that we attach to it, and the fascinating home that's been created inside these oak apple galls and the marble galls for all the minuscule little wasps and flies that inhabit the countryside. A lot of people say, well, what use are they whatsoever? It doesn't affect me if they're there or they're not. But I can promise you it's what we're just becoming aware of the importance of biodiversity. Oak trees are a key part of that. They've got as much right to be here in our landscape as you and I standing here this morning.
Don't chop them. Don't chop them,
No,
please.
no.
Leave them.
Exactly that. Whether they're in the way or not makes no difference at all. They're crucial to look after them. Oh, look, there's an oak apple there that's almost apple coloured, look, with a pink blush on it. Can you see that?
Almost entirely red, that one, isn't
Yes, you almost feel like picking it and eating it, but I can promise you it's just like eating a piece of cardboard.
I don't
have
think I'd
tried
bother.
it, but they do smell, funny enough, like apples if you do cut them in half. But then you see all these maggots inside, and perhaps you have a second thought. But nevertheless, keep your eyes open if you're out in the countryside walking at this time of the year. There's always some miracles and marvels to take your breath away.
Off goes Rat. It's his favourite place. This is Fox's Grove, woodland on Chris's farm. Still the blue as well as the bluebells.
Yes, they're sort of having a late burst of colour this year, and just extraordinary. The whole area of woodland is over 30 acres, and it's all on a hillside, and there's sands and gravels here, and some of the hills in the centre of the wood are really quite difficult to walk up. It's almost a hands and knees job. And for Norfolk, that's extraordinary. The flat country.
We get vertigo just looking at it here,
Yes.
don't we?
Yes,
But actually these flowers are still out quite nicely, aren't they?
Yes, it's really a long display, so almost a month from the first ones, and they've still got another week left in them, I think. Anyway, Rat's sort of wandered off ahead of us, and he's actually leading the way because we've got a short walk to do. And on our left are some monumental mounds of sand that's been dug out by the badger set. The whole area is protected by several cameras which are here the whole time, to protect the badgers. And now this is a sort of disused part of the set on our right. We're standing on a track. It's one of the old entrances to High Ash Farm. A big old oak tree there which was pollarded sort of probably a century ago, and this probably was sort of grazing, woodland grazing for the cattle on the farm. The field, this level bit of woodland behind us, there's a gatepost just over there, and that was a field of barley, which is now mature woodland back in the 1940s. Amazing, the history of woodland and how it changes over the course of centuries. A large badger hole right beside us on this side of the
Cavernous. You could go potholing in there.
you certainly could. The badgers are sort of the original landowners, I suppose. But we've got a little treat here, and we just need to walk up. This is the other oak tree that formed the monumental entrance of High Ash Farm, and it's, excuse me, long since fallen over, and it's on its way back into the woodland soil, just reverting to peat and organic matter.
Just a hollow husk now,
It is
isn't
now,
it?
but it's the playground, and I did notice here a lot of the bluebells had been flattened. So let's just walk in a little bit. We have to behave because we're actually on camera now. I've left my phone in the car because if anything walks into this area of woodland, my phone rings. Now you can see the area around that hole. Rat's taken some interest in it. The bluebells have been flattened completely. And if we just walk on a little bit more, this is the site of the action. A very large hole, a huge pile of sand, and this part of the badger set has been taken over by a vixen. Now, this is no ordinary vixen, because you can see there's a camera there. There's another camera over in the distance where Rat is now. He's now being filmed. he needs to get on this week's podcast, you see. So there we are. So this records the activity here, and there's other cameras here which record the whole area as well. Now, Rat's sniffing round there, but he's not going down the hole. He knows better than that. When I said it's no ordinary vixen, there are 8 cubs here, and I have got the camera that we're looking at facing into the main entrance hole, and the foxes are really, really welcome here because I've been watching them since the first fox cubs came out of the earth about 12 days ago, and I watch what they eat, what Mum brings them, and she also nurses them as well, all 8 of them. But she didn't give birth to 8 cubs. She gave birth to 4 cubs. Now, I can see you scratching your head.
Yes, where are the other 4 come from then?
Right. We sadly had a casualty quite close to the farm. A vixen got killed on the road. And when I picked her up in order to bury her, I noticed that she's been nursing cubs. And I knew approximately where her earth was. And so I visited it. And of course, there's nothing I can do. That I was fairly aware there were 4 cubs. In the Rat's barking at nothing at the moment. I was fairly aware there were 4 cubs there, and so I visited it for 2 or 3 days, expecting the worst, either to find dead cubs or a really powerful, pungent smell of decaying cubs, because they were only about 4 to 5 weeks old when this happened, and not old enough to look after themselves. But as I'm learning with the wildlife on the farm, there's always something new to learn. And either a dog fox or what we call a barren vixen, who helps sometimes the mother of fox cubs to look after the cubs and will feed the cubs and play with them. I don't know which did it, but they picked the cubs up and brought them to this part of the earth where the mother... So the mum now has 8. I've even had a glimpse of number 9 cub. But until I can confirm it, I reckon I'm going to go for the Guinness Book of Records here.
How far were the other cubs?
About 1/4 mile away.
So this has all happened over quite a long distance.
Yes, yeah. So they have... If fox earth gets disturbed early on, just after the vixen has given birth, they have been known to move them to a new destination, particularly if you have human disturbance. Here, there's people walking past the whole time, there's horses, and the cubs here are fairly well accustomed, but all the videos I have of night time, and we'll be able to look at it on this Sunday's High Ash Farm Facebook page. You'll be able to see the video of the cubs, like we did with last week with the yellowhammers here at the farm. Now, just extraordinary to see that number, and the vixen, the main vixen who gave birth to this particular set of 4 cubs, she's nursing all 8 of them and feeding them. Now, the feeding fascinates me because you always expect, foxes being what foxes are, raiding the local hen house or whatever. Not a bit of it. She's bought to date 9 grey squirrels here. Over a dozen rabbits, some of which are fully grown, and you can see the cubs actually tackling one of the rabbits. It's like the takeaway. They don't know whether to eat the rabbit or go and nurse their mum. And a whole variety. They even brought some small mammals back, 2 or 3 long-tailed field mice, and she regurgitates those. She brings them back in her stomach, and then sorry if you're having your breakfast this morning, and the cubs obviously eat that very quickly.
Chris has shown me this footage.
Yes.
Before we came out today, and I have to tell you, it's absolutely stunning. So if you have access at all to Facebook, High Ash Farm Facebook, do have a look. It's after dark in black and white, but you see very clearly the cubs arguing and having a tug of war over a rabbit, and then you see them suckling the mother, the poor, long-suffering mother.
Yes, you're telling me. It's just amazing. But that has totally surprised me at the diet, because we've got pheasants all over the farm. Many of the pheasants are incubating. We have partridge here. And there hasn't to date been a single game bird brought back. And so it's very easy to blame foxes, reducing game species and ground nesting birds. But the variety, and that's what foxes are notorious for. They'll eat blackberries and plums in the autumn. They'll reach up. So they're have a hugely varied diet.
I'm surprised they could catch a squirrel, though.
Yes, well, the squirrels are about really early in the morning, and the vixen's brought them back. It's in half light, and she just brings them back, drops them, and the fox cubs eat them. But it's a kind of natural control, because squirrels can do, particularly in areas of woodland like this. We visited some successional woodland last autumn in the podcast that we were doing at the time, and they were barking the young oak trees and causing a huge amount of damage. It's natural, but
Stripping the bark.
It was stripping the bark and stopping many of the oaks becoming fully mature. It kind of pollarding them at about 8 feet tall, and so it's a kind of natural control without me interfering, because that is what I've had learned to do at the farm, to stand back and let nature do what nature does best, which is exactly what it does. It just teaches me every day that the foxes aren't causing a problem here, and I think we should now start to learn the new way of looking after the countries by standing back and not necessarily having to control everything that you don't like. There's space for us all, and particularly the wildlife and some of the things that we visit on the weekly podcasts that we're carrying on doing at the moment. But it's tearful just watching this, watching the cubs play as well. Play fighting is a really important part. The young dog foxes will eventually, once we get to this autumn, they'll move off and form their own territories. And many of the young vixens will stay. They might not breed in the first year or even the second year. And because their lives are quite short, dog foxes can live for 8 to 10 years, vixens as well, but very often, because of all the control measures that humans carry out, and of course accidents with cars as well, they have a very limited life for most of them. Rats rejoined us, but the sun has just come out through the trees, which are now, we've got this canopy of leaves over us, and Matthew, you are being treated to such a glorious, glorious sight that's tearfully beautiful.
Lovely bluebells. And the Fox's Earth, which looks deserted but certainly isn't.
No, it's full of activity, and the cameras are there, and I'll pick them up shortly and just examine the footage tonight, make sure the batteries are still good. And the long distance ones stay here all the time, and they're solar powered, and the footage from those is amazing. I'm always seeing deer and all sorts of activity in this woodland
Badgers
at the hours of night.
There are many bird species on High Ash Farm, and Chris Skinner, that's one of them, isn't it?
Yes, very diminutive. Matthew, we're being serenaded by a wren.
Just one of the great delights of visiting the farm, but we need your assistance.
Yes, to keep us in fine voice, we need a few donations.
Any surplus funds to go towards the wonderful conservation work, to make a small one-off payment or a monthly donation. highashfarm.com/podcast.
Believe me, it's just a pure delight.
And that includes Jenny Wren.
Very fine voice.
Where is that rat? He's setting your cameras off.
Yes, he certainly is. He's strolling through the bluebells, being very well behaved. Come on, rat.
Thanks for all your emails this week. Tony Cooper sends us an article that recently appeared in the Norfolk and Suffolk Life magazine, written by Lynn Bensley. Do we know what a Jimpo is, or a ruddock, or a shuffle wing, or a smoky, a hedge scrubber? This article, and I've been looking through it, and there's so much history in it, is all about the colloquial names that we've given to birds.
Yes, and of course ruddock refers to robin, and then that wonderful old story about who killed Cock Robin, and of course it was I, the sparrow, with my bow and arrow, and lots of the history like that, which is hugely entertaining. Of course, it's a great way for young people to learn about the wildlife that we share our countryside with, and often it relates to birds and sometimes to animals as well, like we're near the badger set here, and of course that's called Brock, the old badgers. Lots of lovely old names, some of which are still used. Most of them, sadly, have sort of disappeared into the mists of time.
Jimpo, that's a wren, I think.
Yes, wren, and there's also one for the pied wagtail as well in there somewhere, which they all have really unusual names, but you can kind of work out what the bird is, because ruddock is an old name for redbreast or rudd. We have fish on the farm called rudd, which have beautiful bright red fins on their body. So rudd, it's a very old English or Anglo-Saxon word.
Hedge scrubber, dunnock, and here's a lovely one I've read in the article here. Blue tit was occasionally known as a pick cheese.
Pick cheese, yes. Oh, wonderful.
It's there if you can find it.
Yes.
It's a wonderful article to read, and it's in Norfolk and Suffolk Life from, this last month.
Yes, and thank you very much, Tony, for sending that through. Very welcome. We love questions and comments like that, good or bad.
Tony Bridge, if anyone who has a lawn about 4 p.m. watered a small area, watch the starlings come in to feed on grubs. We do our bit to help, and to watch them, it's a wonderful scene.
Absolutely, and when you have showers of rain at the farm, the starlings go frantic because it can then release the larvae of daddy longlegs, those long flies, it's also called harvest flies in Norfolk, and the grubs of the daddy longlegs are called leather jackets, and it brings the leather jackets right up to the surface, and that's top notch for birds like starlings that just ferret about on very short grass. It brings them all up to the surface, worms as well, and of course blackbirds in these dry conditions, and other soil invertebrate eating species, song thrushes as well. They're having a difficult time in this dry weather with being serenaded. In the background by a stock dove, a diminutive relative of the wood pigeon. They're all the same family. You often have collared doves in built-up areas, and there's some nest boxes further up in the woodland, and one of the boxes is occupied by a pair of stock doves. Beautiful birds with iridescence on their necks. Wonderful sound.
Sound last week on this podcast was you and Rat going for a walk near the sea.
Yes.
At Aldborough, and we've got a couple of comments about swifts. Julian lives in Halesworth. Good news, swifts back over our home in Halesworth. Bit early this year, being the 30th of April. Have you noticed any yet? They said. Well, yes, I mean, but you did have to go to the seaside.
I did, yes, because Aldborough on the Suffolk coast welcomes the swifts each year, and they go to special measures there by putting up lots and lots of swift nest boxes. Congratulations to Aldborough. So listen, if you can, Julian, to last week's podcast. Start off with the swifts.
John Spink says, hello, Farmer Skinner. As a child, my friends and I would gather at the corner of 2 roads in the village and wait for the swifts to perform that screaming parade that you talked about. always the same time of day, flying just above our heads. Has there ever been any kind of explanation?
No, not really. I'm just going to pick this demented terrier up. He thinks he's being left out. I've done a bit of research, and we think this kind of mad screaming parties, as they're called, are all part of the early portion of the mating ceremony. They're actually... You'd have 10, 20, even 30 swifts flying around madly, and they're all looking for partners, and then that's a means of sort of pairing up after their long flight up. I'd call it a long flight. The swifts are flying anyway, so they just come here to breed in their short season of summer, the summer months, between 12 and, if we're lucky, 16 weeks that they're here.
And here's one from Julian, who says, house sparrow terraces, none nesting as yet, even in with them being in gardens all winter. 2 took up residence in a single box next to them, but after a few days they too moved on. A few keep coming and exploring, but to no avail as yet. How long did it take you to get some back?
Yes, it was a long and slow process to start with, because I made lots of mistakes. But a local gamekeeper came and had a chat with me. We were talking about something else completely, and I said I've converted the old stable block into sparrow nest boxes, and I said none are occupied. And he said, wait, he said, well, don't let anybody see you. Get some hay and just stuff into the entrance holes. And I thought he's sort of, because Norfolk people have got a really warped sense of humour, and I thought he was pulling a fast one. But nevertheless, I did that, and after a few days, all the hay disappeared, and it kind of seeded the sparrow nest boxes. They're members of the weaver bird family, some of the untidiest nesting birds in the world, and they like that scruffy aspect to the nest hole. They go and investigate it and think, oh, this is rather nice, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you can kind of seed your nest boxes like that.
We'll stay in Norfolk, but in fact an hour and a half's drive from where we're standing at least. Angela and Michael Newhouse have been to Holm-next-the-Sea. They're actually from Northamptonshire. They were on holiday though in Norfolk, and they said, thought you'd like to know we heard our first and possibly only cuckoo this year at the Nature Reserve at Holm on the 30th of April. Many years ago we heard and saw cuckoos in our garden in Northants, but alas, no more.
No, and that's typical of the cuckoo population across the United Kingdom. The BTO, that's the British Trust for Ornithology, doing lots of research on them, and if you're lucky enough, and you can have a cuckoo named after you with a satellite tag on it. And a few years ago there was a cuckoo called Skinner, would you believe? And I actually died in the Congo Basin, but I did provide an awful lot of information, and I actually flew over the centre of Norwich, although I was tagged at Whitlingham, just a few miles from where we're standing, and it all helps to build up the picture of why cuckoos are declining to such a large extent. And is it something to do with human activity or just the change in the climate? Many of the answers have yet to be found as to why they're a declining species, and I haven't yet heard one at the farm. I did wonder when we heard that stock dove cooing like that. It's a woo, 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 woo noise like that. I did wonder because my hearing's not as good as it used to be, too much misspent youth, and sometimes it's easy to confuse, and collared doves make a similar sound to cuckoos as well, so you can be confused by some of the sounds that you hear out in the countryside. And starlings are excellent mimics of them as well. They'll pick up the cuckoo sound and you think, oh, there's a cuckoo nearby, and it's actually a starling. So there we are. But yet nobody knows quite all the reasons why that wonderful sound, it's the most recognisable sound of all the bird species, perhaps, that everybody in the UK knows, the cuckoo.
Already well into May, and what a great visit to High Ash Farm. Chris, thank you very much for our podcast this week, and for any more questions, comments, whatever you like, Chris's email, chris@highashfarm.com. And thanks for all your donations to the podcast as well, all gratefully received. voluntary subscriptions keep the podcast going and help out on the farm as well with all the different activities to promote the wildlife.
Exactly that. So, yeah, I wouldn't like to say I'm farming wildlife, but we're doing everything we can to encourage the whole range, the whole raft of biodiversity, and all the donations certainly help make that possible. And it's such an enjoyable experience sharing what we share each week with our podcast listeners. A huge thank you from Matthew and I and Rat, who's in my arms here. Yes, behaving very well indeed. Good boy, Rat.
I've got to get back to the car now through these nettles, haven't
Yes,
I?
I parked slightly to one side of the track. Matthew's got out into a patch of stinging nettles. Fortunately, he's not got shorts on, but...
But these are good for the butterflies,
No,
aren't they?
absolutely. That's what all these nettles are here for. We've already seen peacock butterflies and red admiral butterflies, and they'll be laying their eggs as well as small tortoiseshell on the underside of these delicious green verdant nettles. I know you don't like them, but they're important to our wildlife.
Oh, ow. Through my trousers, that one. Oh.